Okay, today's video we're going to talk about remarketing audiences, how you basically guarantee a remarketing audience and along with that a remarketing campaign will be profitable to you while still maximizing the amount of actual conversions or sales that remarketing strategy can do for your business. If you don't know anything about remarketing or are new to it, everybody needs a remarketing strategy. You can go around to any marketing expert will tell you that following people up that you've marketed to is more profitable, a bit to some degree, than marketing to each person that you want to go after and sell to just one time. Whether that's sending out, mail in the mail. If you have an option to send it to 3 times as many people or a third of the amount of people you have 3 times, usually it's the 3 times that will work better. You have to work out the frequency that works the best, but just one time to each person doesn't work. Why? Because they don't take you seriously until they've seen it a few times. This is just kind of how the human mind works. They don't trust what they're not familiar with. The frequency in your marketing builds, if you want to call it false trust or artificial trust. I mean, in their minds, trust is trust. There's no differentiation. You're pushing that or creating that falsified feeling of trust, so that when they go to make a decision to buy, you're the first person they think of, and because they thought of you first, they think you're the most authoritative. Therefore, they buy from you more frequently or just in general. That's how remarketing works in PPC and just any other marketing you're going to do, why you want to do it. So you always devote 10% or so of your ad budget. This is what I do for all our clients at our agency, to remarketing, simply to get more out of the new traffic that you're driving in. Or another way to put it is, you're not going to earn nearly as much out of your traffic that you're paying $1, $2, $5, $10 a click to get to your site from Google search or where have you, whether, if it's Facebook ads, whatever, if you don't do remarketing, because the remarketing's that important. So by spending 10% or so, 10 to 20% is what I actually spend on remarketing from campaign account to account. I'm going to get as much as twice as many sales from the new traffic that I'm driving in. And there's a big if here, if you do it right. There's a lot of things, mainly I'm talking about the ad, what's on your ads here to get that kind of a bump. Just putting an ad out there that says, are you ready to buy yet? No? How about now? How about now? How about now? People get pissed off by that. It will still help you some. I would recommend that versus nothing. But you want to double your amount of, basically conversion rate on the new traffic coming in. Then you definitely want to have several ads. I recommend 10 different ads that focus on the testimonials and reviews and features of your company and so on and so forth, to build up a narrative in the person's mind. Whether they like it or not, they're going to see it in the periphery as they're viewing different things online leading up to the time where they normally kind of decide to purchase, or during that window of time where they procrastinate. So they basically absorb everything, why they should trust your company and what's good about it and what's good about your product or service. So they basically end up knowing it whether they like it or not. And it comes in bite-sized chunks, if you will, because they one day see a testimonial, the next day they see another testimonial from somebody else, the next day they see your Google reviews, which are great, the next day they see a feature of your product that maybe you've listed on your site, but they didn't notice it right away. You get my point. You rotate these ads out for the user. That's how you get actually double the amount of sales from your new traffic coming in. So you should think of remarketing and new traffic coming in as a package. It's not so much, I have to get my remarketing to pay XYZ ROI on paper in terms of people clicking through and buying, because a lot of times you're not going to get a good ROI there at its surface. Well, what it is doing is making the new traffic come in work better. So of course you could take my word for it, or you could look at and do this for yourself and then just see how much more revenue overall you're going to get at the end of the day from your company coming in once you've added remarketing to your overall business strategy and marketing strategy. So anyway, with all that prelude out of the way in terms about remarketing, remarketing is all predicated or based upon these audiences. So you have to define, remarketing isn't just marketing to people who've been to your site already. I mean, traditionally that's what the word means, but you could segment out who you market to. Do I want to market to people who just got to my shopping cart, or just got to my contact us page, or people who've been to the site more than one time, or people who've been to the site more than 5 minutes, what have you? Why? Because each one of those different ways that you break it up has a different potential of bringing you in revenue. And if you're one that does want to see a higher ROI from your remarketing, you got to get into figuring out those ads I told you that traditionally I'll use to get the most out of the new traffic coming in. Who should see it, for how long, and when, basically, through these audiences, breaking things up. Clients all the time come to me and they'll say, basically, I need a good return on the remarketing, whether or not you say that it works to market to people regardless of the fact of what the ROI shows in my Google Ads account on my remarketing campaigns. They'll want an ROI at face value showing on the campaigns themselves. And when that situation comes, this is how I do it to make sure I get an ROI and at the same time get the maximum amount of profit with the maximum amount of volume I can from the remarketing for that client in those situations. So I'm going to go over what that strategy is and how you can implement this for yourself. It's a turnkey strategy, and basically should be able to change what you're doing. If you're not happy with the ROI from your remarketing, you will be and still get a decent amount of volume in case you're struggling with it, or just in general, because I've tested this so many different which ways that if you implement this, almost guaranteed to get you more out of your remarketing. If that's your goal to get a tight ROI where you have to have a 5-to-1 or 8-to-1 ROI and still get the most volume you can, this should be able to help you do it. So anyway, getting into it, Google provides endless ways to segment and sub-segment people you paid good money to get to the site in the first place. How you determine to sub-segment your remarketing audiences, or who you are going to show those remarketing ads to, determines if you make nothing, like after the cost of your ads, you make nothing, or you make $1,000 a month, or the extra $5,000 or $10,000 a month. It's all how you sub-segment your audiences. Because just marketing to everybody, there's so many different people that come to your site, and for so many different reasons, and different motivations, and different seriousness, that if you could become a master in sub-segmenting and finding out which parts of all the people that come to your site that are like 50 times more likely to buy, and people who are like 50 times less likely to buy, and can identify specifically where that's at for your market and your company specifically, that you're going to end up making the most money and still not having to be in position to pay too much for the marketing or have a low ROI at the same time. So therefore, you want to add sub-segmentation in your remarketing strategy pretty much if you expect to have a high ROI and still lots of top-end profit and revenue coming in at the same time. So here are the ways to sub-segment my remarketing to make the most profit possible while still getting a decent ROI showing in my account on my remarketing campaigns when we have to deliver that for our clients. I still do remarketing just for the recall rate. There's a thing called in marketing recall. The easier you could recall a brand, the more likely it is that you're going to buy from them. In terms of advertising, that's what big companies like fast food restaurants and stuff do to judge their marketing. In this particular case, all those ads I told you about, I'm going to show it to everybody anyway, because I know, like I said, if I'm going to pay $10 to get somebody to the site and it costs me literally a penny to have my remarketing ad show up for them one time, I'm going to invest all that because I know overall, even though the ROI on the campaign does not show, the new traffic coming in shows a 10-to-1, but my remarketing shows a 1-to-1, I'm still going to do it. Why? Because I know part of the 10-to-1 I got from the new traffic campaign came from being able to, quote unquote, on paper anyway, lose money on that remarketing campaign to build up the recall rate of my company name in their mind while they're trying to decide and while they're researching other solutions. So they ultimately, when they come to the 0 point of actually making a purchase decision 2 weeks from now, they say, shoot, I have to make a decision today to buy from somebody, they'll remember my company's name first because I've done all that remarketing. So I think about remarketing really as a loss, as a way to get overall, like I said, you should think about it. If you want to be a top marketer, PPC marketer, you think about remarketing as a part of a package. The new traffic and the remarketing is just one, and just look at the ROI overall. But again, if you're one that needs to see an ROI on the remarketing campaign itself, by itself, then this is the best way to do it and still get the most sales out of your remarketing at the same time. So what this is this actually breaks down statistically the ways that I usually break it down, and in which generally, if you can sub-segment your traffic and know that you're one of the people that are on your remarketing list overall have done one of these things, they're X number percentage more likely to buy. So everything comes down to stats. And I put it 80% as a general target here. I want to know basically when somebody's at least 80% more likely to purchase, then I want to put them in an audience by themselves because I want to bid a separate amount for that sub audience. So part of the reason why you sub-segment is, yes, to get certain people to not see your ads, but at the same time, the people that are left, the way that you sub-segment things out, you can adjust how much you're willing to pay per click on the rest of them, which is something that you're also going to be doing. So, but how I sub-segment things out is based upon looking at lots and lots of data for different various accounts before, dozens and dozens here, basically hundreds if you want to say that, to see certain actions that people have took that made it way more likely for them to buy. Okay, so we want to take a special interest in that. And basically at the end of the day, the more of those things they do in combination, therefore at the same time we can also conclude the more likely they're to buy even yet. So with that said, if you know what these things are, now you know if you have a low ROI now, how you can get it up by focusing on these things. And also on top of that, if they're doing multiple of these things, they're even more likely to buy. And you probably maybe even want to narrow things down to that, or you can spend more to get people who've done more than one of these things done, which is what my goal was to convey to you here today. So with that, and you can pay different prices for, if they've done some of these things versus all of these things. And ultimately, when you add it all up, you'll be able to hit a target ROI that you're looking for out of your remarketing campaigns in general. So if you have a remarketing campaign, I would recommend creating a separate ad group for each one of these individual, what I'll just call it actions, so that at the very least, if you don't have the ROI you have right now, you'll cut out everything that doesn't hit these targets here, or these, if they haven't done one of these 5 actions here, you're just going to stop marketing to them, and that's going to be your starting point here. Of those things, what are those 5? So in other words, what are those 5 things that if they do these things, they're much more likely to purchase? The first of all, we'll focus on is time on site. If somebody's been on, and again, this has been me digging through, millions of dollars of ad account data here, and a lot of time researching this. If somebody's been on the site for more than 5 minutes in general, I found they're about 80% more likely to purchase in general. So with that, what you do, and this can be easily done, what you do is you link up your Google Analytics account with your Google Ads account, and then in your Google Analytics account, under the Custom Audiences menu, you can Google that, how to find that. It's easy for you to create an audience that says, if they've been on the site more than 5 minutes, then I want them on this particular audience, and you can label it like more than 5 minutes, to make sure you know what it is. And you import that audience into your Google Analytics account, into the ad group, which you're going to label also more than 5 minutes. So you have an ad group just for more than 5 minutes on the site, basically, at the end of the day. Now, the next one to focus on is frequency or times to the site that they've been on the site. So how many times have they been on your site in general? If they've been on your site more than 3 times, that's the time which then they're at least 80% more likely to purchase, as I found. So doing the same thing there again, you go ahead and you go in Google Analytics and actually define an audience that's which you'll name more than 3 times, like carrot 3 times or whatever, and you're going to import that and then into a separate ad group which is labeled more than 3 times to the site, because they're 80% more likely to purchase if they've been on the site at least 3 times already, which makes them a special target of interest and very much, let's say 90% more likely to be profitable for you, respectively. With that said, more so 80%, not 90%, sorry. That said, moving forward here, the next area of interest is number of purchases made. When somebody gets to, so this is, I put pages here. I meant to say, or purchases. I meant to say pages. Sorry about that. Number of pages the user's been on here. Sorry. If they've been to more than 5 pages on your site, excuse me. If they've been to more than 5 pages on your site in total now, they're also 80% more likely to purchase yet. So literally, did they go to your landing page and did they go to, your prices page, and then did they go to, I don't know, your contact page or whatever? But it's not in general just all in one session. I want to be clear about that. So in other words, they could go to your site, go to 1 page. They could come back later and go to 2 more pages. They could come back later and go to 3 more pages. In total, once they've been to your site and been to and out between all the visits or all the sessions, in other words, if they visited more than 5 unique pages, okay, and respectively, it could, if it's on a different visit and they go to the same page, that doesn't count. It has to be 5 unique pages, okay? Well, that's how it's going to be most easily set up in Google Analytics as an audience anyway. But if they've been to more than 5 pages on your site, and obviously some sites, it's not going to really help you because you only have so many pages, but we're going to assume you have at least 5 pages on your site. 80% more likely to purchase if they've been to more than 5 pages. You'll have one ad group that's just set up and named more than 5 pages, because if they hit that target there, again, they're going to be 80% more likely to purchase. Therefore, they're a point of interest for us in our remarketing, investing in remarketing for those people. The next one is hit cart or the contact page. So if you're an e-commerce business, if they hit your shopping cart, which you define somebody who does that like /cart, usually if you go to the shopping cart, you look at the URL and you try to find out the unique footprint, as they call it, for what, because there's multiple pages on your cart, like, overview and then, checkout, and then, so, or you could just say the first page of your cart, whatever is on your URL. Usually they have like cart in there, which is, you were looking for something that's different on that shopping cart URL that the page is physically on than anything else on your site. So when you say, when you define your audience, you can say pages that include cart. And then it'll know, okay, if they hit the cart, that you want them on this, this list. For non-e-commerce businesses, like a service-based business, if they hit your contact page, generally speaking, it's about roughly the same. It's a little bit different. I just included them because it's pretty much the same. If they get to your contact page and they're writing down your phone number or they're checking your hours, that person's highly, highly, highly more likely to buy. In both cases, they're 80% more likely to purchase pretty much. So I'm putting them in either case, whether you're e-commerce or non-e-commerce, into its own audience and therefore then also their own ad group just for that, whether they got to the cart or they got to the contact page on my site. Finally, the last point of interest to develop a profitable marketing campaign at the highest profit volume you can get, time since last visit. So there's time decay. The longer it's been since somebody's been on your site, the less likely that they're going to purchase. Why? Because they cool off. Respectively, they're in the buying mode. They're excited to buy when they get to your site and they're searching around. And each day that goes by, it's just how it is. Statistically, they're less likely to be excited to buy. It may be what you have, maybe not even that exciting to buy it, but people, it's either excited or willing to buy is another good way to put that. So respectively, if they've been to your site in the last 3 days still, they're 80% more likely to purchase or buy whatever you have there. So we want to put them into their own audience / ad group by itself as well. And that's the last one. So overall, time on site, more than 5 minutes, times to the site, more than 3 times to the site, number of pages visited, which is pages visited, more than 5 pages visited between all sessions on visits to the site, hit the cart or contact page, and been on the site less than 3 days ago. All of those are separate ad groups. So ultimately, if you're struggling to make your remarketing campaign profitable now, you go ahead and set up and define all those audiences just like I told you, put them in separate ad groups and run it. Your campaign profitability should go up like 5-fold, like right away. Okay? This is pretty standard stuff. If you do this, you already got something you're going to walk away with and probably hit your goal with pretty much right away. Okay? You don't have to make it any more complicated than that. Though we can go one step further. Well, before I go there, like I said, going back to the bid adjustments thing, we can set the ad group bid whatever we want, assuming we have manual bidding set up as on the campaign settings, which I always use because I want the most control here. I want to be able to identify. We gotta of course have conversion tracking set up before we even start. Assuming that, and then with conversion tracking, we could see which of these 5 buckets converts the best, because it'll be a little bit different business to business and market to market. So, shouldn't just set up what I told you to set up here, even though it will 5x your ROI right off the bat, probably instantly. Which you may say, oh, screw the rest, whatever. But for you guys that want to get some extra credit here, come back after you got 1,000 clicks. Overall, and then anything that's gotten basically over 200 to 300 clicks, you can adjust your bid either up or down using what is called a bid modification formula. That you can Google that, and then just adjust your bid up or down based upon which ones are working better versus not working as good. Okay. Once you've done that, you can look at your overall, let's say 3 to 6 months down the line. If you still don't have the ROI that you want yet, you've adjusted your bids to get more out of the ones that are working better than average, and you pull budget away from the ones that are working less than average to do it, to go to the ad groups there that you've built that work above average. If you need an ROI on your remarketing campaign of 8 to 1 and it's 6 to 1, then after you've made your adjustments 2 to 3 times here on to your individual ad group bids, well then you'll just look at what's the difference between 6 and 8. Okay, that's a 20% difference. So I'm just going to lower the bids overall on all 5 of these different ad groups by 20%. Now I've got an ROI of 8 to 1. It's really that simple. Of course, your volume is going to go down by mandating I need to have an 8 to 1 versus a 6 to 1 return, because you're going to now show up. You'll be less eligible to show up in less auctions. Certain websites, if you did not know, basically people fight to get on those websites, and it's an auction on each website itself, or the banner space on each website. And so if you lower your bids, websites that you were winning the auction on before, you're not winning the auction anymore on. So you'll have less opportunities overall to show up for the people that are on your remarketing list here, basically, okay? Which means less volume. So you'll get the ROI that you want, but you'll have less volume. And so it's always a trade-off. The more ROI that you want, the less volume you're going to get potentially by doing it this way, or just in general. This is the way to do it. So you're always trying to figure out what's the lowest ROI that I can stand having, and you'll basically test it, because obviously you'll get more revenue the lower your ROI target is, and there'll be a sweet spot in there. You're going to have to find out what that is for yourself and to get the most profit. So once you've actually then dialed in the ROI, though, it should be very consistent from there on out. If you're not going to go the second step I'm going to explain here next, for you to get the ROI that you want at the maximum amount of sales overall that you can get, like I mentioned that you should be able to do on this video. That's actually the whole thing right there. Now, if you want to take this a step further, I mentioned at the beginning of the video, the more things that a person does, the more likely or less likely you can identify that person is going to be able to buy or not buy. And you want to use that data to your advantage. Why? Because obviously you can decide who to weed out and who to spend more on potentially, or just who to spend money on in general. So we don't have to simply settle on, did somebody go to the site and was on the site more than 5 minutes, or and this I didn't mention before, this is more than 5 minutes on a single session. This is how your audience would be set up by default. It's this time to site, and would be set up by default. When you go ahead and set up more than 5 minutes, it's not going to add up all the sessions. Okay, if you were curious about that via Google Analytics there. That said, if they do more than one of these things, they're more likely to buy even yet, because these are all high intent things in which they're 80% more likely to purchase than your average person that comes to your site, which we filtered out all the rest. And so therefore we want to specifically tell Google that if they do any of these 5 things, therefore we want to bid on them because they're great opportunities. The more of these they do overall, even more statistically, yet they'll be more likely to purchase even yet. So if they do 2 of these things, they're going to be more likely about twice as likely to purchase, would say, roughly speaking, than if they just did 1. It's not quite that much, but you get the general gist here. If they do 3 things, well, they could be upwards of 3 times more likely. Again, it's not quite that much in terms of how much more statistically likely, but it's more, and it'll vary by market. And the same thing goes for 4 and then 5. So if you want to get even more total purchases from people on your remarketing list at your targeted ROI, what you're going to do is you're going to set up additional ad groups for people who have been on 2 versus 3 versus 4 versus 5 of these lists. And actually, the way to properly execute this is you want to create an ad group that's called time on site, 5 minutes, plus frequency times to the site more than 3 times. So meaning if they've been on the site more than 5 minutes on at least one of their visits, and they've been to the site at least 3 times both, you could create a specific audience in Google Analytics that's it must be this and this. Then they end up on another audience by itself, which you have in another separate ad group by itself. Okay? And then that puts you in position to be able to bid even more, specifically after running your campaigns for a while, like you did before and like I said before, seeing how it converts, and then going, adjusting your bid, and you'll decide how much you can actually afford to adjust your bid up based upon how much better it does than if they're just on your audience and ad group for more than 5 minutes, or more than 3 visits to the site by itself individually. And so what I'll do is I'll actually set up a whole matrix. And this sounds crazy, but I'm a crazy person. I want, crazy results. When it comes to, building up a multi-million-dollar ad campaign on Google, it's about using these strategies one at a time and stacking up your results. Because the more depth you add to your campaign, the more you can expect. And it takes a long time and a lot of work. But each one of these things are things your competitors are not doing, which is where the free, basically extra money comes from. So obviously, most of the stuff, if not all of it, costs no extra money to do. It's just manpower. Anyway, so you'll create an ad group if they've been on this list and this list, but you'll create an ad group if they've been on this list and this list together. So time on site, more than 5 minutes, number of pages, more than 5 pages, and then you'll create an ad group that's this and this, so more than 5 minutes, plus hit the cart or contact page, more than 5 minutes, plus they were on the site within the last 3 days. So there's different permutations there, and then you'll have to keep going, right? It'd be this one, times to the site more than 3, plus more than 5 pages. Times to the site more than 3 times, plus been to the cart or contact page. Been to the site more than 3 times, plus they were on the site less than 3 days ago. I didn't clarify this, but I did actually say it. It's last visit, not since their first visit, since their last visit. And that's by default how Google Analytics would define it anyway, in terms of time from the last visit there. So you get the general idea. So if you count it up and you remember, basically high school math here, if you have 5 options here, you're going to have 25 ad groups when you add up all the different combinations here. So if you have 5 groups that I told you that you'll start with, if these 5 by themselves, plus another 25 when you add in the combinations, right, where they've been on more than one, okay? And so you have a total of 30. Now, generally, for most people, this is going to be enough. You have 30 ad groups that you can adjust the bids, and based upon where they fall, did they fall on one? Did they fall on more than one? You can adjust your bids. If you have 100,000 visits to your site a month or more, then you can take this one step further. If they've been on 3 of these lists, then you'll have a separate ad group for that. And you'll have different permutations there. So you'll have 3, 3, 3, 1, 2, 3, and so forth. And I don't know how many permutations is that. My math's a little bit weak there, but you get my point. You'll have, out of your 5, all the different combinations of 3, so you can adjust bids for each one of those unique permutations there. And then, of course, there'll be different combinations of 4 that you have in separate ad groups, and then you're taking it as far as you can take it there. And so you adjust your bids based upon, did they do 1 thing, 2 things, 3 things, 4 things, or all 5 things, and specifically what 2, 3, 4 things did they do, or 1 thing did they do, because different combinations are going to have a different level of potential. Like I said, you have to have a lot of visits to go all the way with this, and for low traffic sites, I would say just one of these 5 by themselves, no combinations at all. No combinations and separate ad groups is required at all. So in other words, the more traffic you have, the more potential to break this up into different combinations you have, because ultimately the amount of people who do all 4 of these things will be very low. Okay? If they do all 4 things, the likelihood that they're going to convert is going to be like 100 times more than your average visitor. So therefore, you don't want to miss a single opportunity to get in front of that person. Every single site they visit, you want to be able to have your ad on there. And you don't want to bombard people. That's not what I'm saying here. You still, on your remarketing campaigns, are going to set, I don't talk about this much on this channel, but a frequency, so that they only see at least 5 different ads a day and no more, because people start to get pissed off. There's a limit. So you can go a bit more than that, but that's a nice conservative estimate. But respectively, I want to make sure that person gets all 5. And the lower you bid, because ultimately you're going to adjust your bids based upon how well they convert and your ROI target and where you're commanding your ROI to be. At a certain level of bidding is so low, you may not show up the full amount of times anymore, okay? Respectively, each site has a different cost. Going back to what I said before, there's auctions on each site that determine what the price is going to be on that website to advertise. On a CNN.com, that's going to be more than Joe Schmo's blog. Just because bigger brands went on there. Also, it's less likely to have fraud, whether or not that's true or not. Because some of the really small sites, yeah, they're cheap, but they have a whole lot of fraud on them as well. And sometimes they're straight just click fraud sites. So let's say the person only goes to CNN.com. Well, if you don't bid so high, maybe you have to bid $1 a click to get there. Whereas some of these crummier sites, you have to bid 15 cents based upon how high your click-through rate is on your ads and you doing a good job there. Which the higher the click-through rate on your ads you do, the cheaper your cost per click is going to be, which is why you want to really focus on having good ads and a variety of different ads so they don't get banner blindness and burnout from your different ads that you have. You should actually be able to educate and entertain people at the same time through your ad sequence that you have, that you may not just be able to advertise to that super high profitable opportunity person that was 100 times more likely to purchase. You may just not get in front of them at all because they're only on high desired sites and you're not bidding enough in general. So your goal is to, so somebody's twice as more likely to buy, you're paying one price. If they're 3 times more likely to buy, you're paying it another. 4 times likely to buy, you're paying another. And it just keeps going. That's what you're essentially creating here through this mechanism I gave you, this matrix, if you will. So that you're getting, again, the most sales you can get still at your target ROI. So anyway, I'll wrap it up with that. If you have any questions, you can leave me a comment down below. Anything you think I should have covered and didn't. I have a ton of other videos on this channel about other PPC strategies, money-making strategies. You should check those out if you haven't seen any of my other videos yet. I have a blog at guaranteeppc.com/blog with step-by-step instructions on how to build PPC campaigns the way that I build them here for our clients to guarantee the results. If you like information along those kind of lines, I have it there. And with all that said, I hope you did enjoy. Hope this makes you some extra money, and also hope to see you on the next one. See you later.